Have you ever paused to consider why certain people over 70 appear completely content spending time by themselves? As we journey into our golden years, the constant social pressure that once defined our lives begins to melt away. For many, being alone transforms into not just a simple preference, but a precious gift to be treasured. This isn't about pushing people away or building walls. It's about connecting with your inner thoughts and rediscovering those parts of yourself that often get buried beneath noise and daily demands. The quiet moments we once feared become the very spaces where we find ourselves again. Join me as we uncover 7 powerful yet subtle reasons why those who embrace solitude after 70 might actually be the wisest among us. Each reason reflects remarkable emotional strength, profound self-understanding, and a special kind of inner confidence that only decades of life experience can nurture. Whether you're approaching this season of life yourself or know someone who cherishes their own company more than ever before, stay with me. By the time we finish this journey together, you might see this choice through completely fresh eyes, and perhaps even feel a newfound respect for it. Let's begin this exploration together. Reason 1. A deep respect for inner peace. Solitude after 70 means much more than simply being alone. It reflects a thoughtful decision to protect inner calm over constant activity. Many older adults have spent countless years managing noise, raising children, working demanding jobs, running households, and handling social obligations. But imagine discovering after 7 decades of constant motion that the quiet you once avoided now feels like coming home. As they step into their later years, the desire for calm becomes clearer. Not because they've grown distant, but because they've become wise enough to recognize what truly nourishes the soul. People who choose to be alone often aren't experiencing loneliness. They're being selective. They no longer chase crowds, endless chatter, or packed schedules. They understand that in quietness, there's space to think, reflect, and simply be. And that kind of peace isn't empty. It's wonderfully full. Consider Harold, 74. He was once known as the soul of every neighborhood cookout and card game. But these days, he finds joy sitting by his window with a steaming cup of coffee, listening to beloved music, watching the trees dance in the breeze. Some wonder why he isn't more socially active, but Harold explains that the tranquility he discovers in those simple moments fulfills a need he never recognized in his younger, busier years. Inner peace isn't about complete silence. It's about finding balance. When someone over 70 chooses to spend time in solitude, they're often choosing to limit the chaos that once controlled their lives. They grasp how noise, both actual and emotional, can gradually wear down the spirit. Instead of filling every moment with something loud or urgent, they've learned to treasure stillness. This wisdom doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't need to. It appears in how someone moves more deliberately, speaks more gently, or releases drama without needing to have the final word. It's the mark of someone who has learned that peace doesn't arrive when everything becomes perfect. It comes when you stop trying to control everything and finally allow yourself to simply rest. Reason 2. Freedom from the need to please others. One of the clearest signs of wisdom in older age is the quiet release from people-pleasing. After 70, many individuals realize they no longer need to seek constant approval. They're not trying to impress neighbors, win every argument, or pretend to be someone they're not. After decades of living for others' expectations, they finally discover the liberation of living for themselves. Choosing solitude often naturally follows this newfound freedom. For years, many older adults spent time saying yes when they desperately wanted to say no. They tolerated situations that drained them, smiled when they felt exhausted, and attended events they disliked just to avoid disappointing others. But something remarkable shifts as you age. Your time becomes more precious, your energy more sacred, and your willingness to sacrifice your own comfort for someone else's expectations gradually fades away. Take Carol, 78. She used to feel overwhelming guilt when turning down invitations. Even when she had no desire to attend, she'd appear with a forced smile and stay longer than she wanted. But now, she declines with both kindness and confidence. Not because she no longer cares, but because she finally cares enough about herself to stop stretching beyond her natural limits. This isn't selfishness, it's genuine self-respect. People who enjoy being alone after 70 often carry this quiet strength within them. They're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. They're not waiting for permission to live life on their own terms. They've made peace with the fact that not everyone will support their choices, and they've found comfort in that reality. When someone spends time alone without anxiety or apology, it reveals something important. They've stepped outside the exhausting cycle of constantly earning love or validation. They've stopped making themselves smaller to make others comfortable. And in that space, they've discovered something powerful. Peace doesn't require applause or outside approval. The courage to say no to what drains you becomes the freedom to say yes to what truly matters. Reason 3. A focus on meaningful relationships over social quantity. As people grow older, the desire to be constantly surrounded by crowds often diminishes, replaced by something far more valuable: the search for genuine connection. Those who enjoy solitude after 70 aren't avoiding human contact. They're simply choosing depth over breadth. They've discovered that relationships aren't measured by numbers, but by the authentic moments shared between hearts that truly understand each other. They've learned through experience that peace doesn't come from having dozens of acquaintances, but from those few precious people who truly see you, hear you, and respect your journey. In younger years, being social often meant being perpetually busy, attending large gatherings, noisy celebrations, and maintaining packed calendars. But over time, the appeal of large groups naturally diminishes. Small talk begins to feel increasingly hollow. The constant noise becomes more burdensome than enjoyable. For many older adults, the most nourishing conversations now happen in quiet, one-on-one moments, or sometimes not at all. Consider Leonard, 81. He was once active in several local clubs and community organizations, but in recent years, he's stepped back from those commitments. Now, he connects with his son twice weekly, plays thoughtful games of chess with a trusted neighbor, and occasionally exchanges heartfelt letters with a college friend from decades past. Leonard says these few meaningful connections bring him more inner peace than 100 shallow interactions ever could. People who prefer their own company often value sincerity over mere stimulation. They've experienced enough to recognize that some friendships quickly fade when convenience ends, and not everyone who calls you a friend truly acts like one. So instead of desperately clinging to quantity, they choose intentional solitude over forced connections. And within that choice lies remarkable strength. Being alone doesn't equal loneliness. It means having the courage to release what no longer nourishes your spirit. Those who step away from crowds to protect their peace aren't isolating themselves, they're honoring their deepest truth. Sometimes that's the wisest choice anyone can make. Reason 4. Strong self-reliance and emotional independence. There's something quietly powerful about a person who finds genuine comfort in their own presence. After 70, many discover a kind of self-reliance that isn't boastful or attention-seeking. It's steady and grounded. Like an oak tree that has weathered countless storms, they've grown roots so deep that they no longer sway with every passing wind of opinion or approval. This means they no longer depend heavily on others to feel seen, soothed, or understood. They've become their own anchor through life's changing tides. This doesn't mean they don't enjoy good company or meaningful connection. They absolutely do. But they don't require constant validation or emotional hand-holding to feel complete. Through decades of experience, they've learned how to process their feelings, how to sit calmly with discomfort, and how to navigate their own emotional storms without demanding someone else fix everything. Meet Marie, 77. She lost her beloved husband several years ago and initially feared the silence would completely overwhelm her. But gradually, she developed her own rhythm: morning walks through the neighborhood, reflective journaling by the window, quiet moments of remembrance. She still misses him deeply, but she's no longer afraid of being by herself. Marie says that solitude actually helped her remember that even in loss, she remains whole, changed, but still complete. This kind of emotional independence is uncommon and often misunderstood by younger generations. But it comes from years of lived experience, from facing hardship head-on and realizing that ultimately, no one can carry your heart better than you can. People who develop emotional independence don't avoid or suppress their feelings. They feel everything, the joys and sorrows, the frustrations and celebrations, but they've developed effective tools to manage those emotions without losing themselves in the process. They've built remarkable strength in silence. And when they choose to spend time alone, it's not because they feel empty inside. It's because they've already filled themselves with a peace that doesn't depend on constant outside affirmation. Reason 5. Time for reflection, growth, and inner. Learning solitude after 70 isn't merely restful, it's often deeply transformative. Many who choose to be alone aren't withdrawing from life. They're stepping into a richer, more meaningful dimension of it. They're entering a sacred space filled with reflection, insight, and quiet personal growth that doesn't need to be posted, online, explained to others, or shared for validation. With fewer distractions and outside demands, older adults who embrace solitude often spend more time looking inward. They revisit cherished memories with fresh perspective. They make peace with past choices that once brought regret. They contemplate their purpose and legacy, not in a heavy or morbid way, but in a gentle, honest manner that brings clarity rather than fear. And in that thoughtful process, something remarkable shifts. The mind becomes sharper, the heart grows, softer, and a new kind of wisdom begins to take shape. The kind that can only emerge in stillness. Consider Raymond, 79. He spends his mornings reading philosophy that challenges his thinking, his afternoons tending a small garden where he watches life unfold in miniature, and his evenings recording thoughts in a personal journal that no one else will ever see. He smiles when he says he's learning more about himself now than he ever did during his busy 30s. Not because life is simpler, but because he finally has the space to truly listen to his own wisdom. People who welcome solitude often become more thoughtful observers of life, more aware of what truly matters and what never really did. This quiet insight doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it simply shows up in the way they pause thoughtfully before speaking, or in how they no longer react strongly to small frustrations that once would have ruined their day. When you spend time alone by choice, you begin to see life through a different lens. You stop rushing through moments. You start noticing details others miss. And the important lessons that once passed you by in the noise of daily life now speak clearly in the silence. Solitude becomes not isolation, but a personal classroom. And truly wise people keep showing up for these lessons at 70, 80, or beyond, knowing that growth never really ends until the final breath. Reason 6. Clearer boundaries and stronger protection of time and energy. After 7 decades of living, one of the most empowering realizations is understanding the true value of your remaining time. Those who choose solitude often do so because they've learned just how precious and limited that time really is. Like someone who has discovered gold late in life, they guard these remaining years with greater care than they did their youth. They're no longer interested in maintaining relationships that consistently drain them, engaging in conversations that lead nowhere meaningful, or keeping commitments that pull them too far from their hard-earned peace. Setting firm boundaries isn't always easy, especially for generations raised to be perpetually accommodating. For much of their lives, many older adults were taught to say yes, to remain agreeable, flexible, and available to everyone. But as the years pass, wisdom gradually replaces these outdated expectations, and thoughtful people begin saying no more often, not from bitterness, but from newfound clarity. They know precisely what makes them feel good versus what feels forced, what leaves them energized versus what leaves them exhausted, and they finally give themselves permission to choose accordingly. Meet Joyce, 75. She once answered every phone call immediately, accepted every family gathering invitation regardless of her energy level, and volunteered for every community event that needed help. But now, she first checks in with herself before committing to anything. She still deeply loves people, but she no longer carries guilt for choosing necessary rest over constant obligation. With a peaceful smile, she says these boundaries literally saved both her health and her happiness. People who find comfort in solitude after 70 often develop a sharper awareness of emotional drain. They can sense when someone pulls too much from their energy reserves, or when a situation simply feels wrong for their well-being. And instead of pushing through discomfort as they might have done for decades, they quietly step back. They trust their instincts. They honor their personal limits. And in doing so, they protect their peace as something truly sacred. Because after all these years, they finally understand that it is. This kind of boundary setting isn't about building impenetrable walls or becoming cold. It's about thoughtfully designing a life that fits who they've become, one that leaves ample room for rest, reflection, and genuine joy. And if that means spending more time in their own company, then so be it, because they've learned that peace is always worth protecting. Reason. 7. A life lived with more intention and less distraction. After reaching their 70s, people who embrace solitude aren't necessarily doing less with their lives. They're simply doing what matters more intentionally. After witnessing how quickly decades can pass, they've realized that time isn't something to kill, but something to inhabit fully while it remains. They've learned through experience that a truly meaningful life doesn't need to be constantly busy or crowded. It just needs to be authentic. And spending quality time alone helps them stay focused on what genuinely counts. These wise individuals no longer chase after passing trends, get caught up in needless social drama, or feel pressured to keep up with everyone else. They've experienced enough birthdays, holidays, and life transitions to recognize that much of what once seemed desperately urgent wasn't important at all. Instead, they choose to move through life at a more deliberate pace. They prepare meals with mindful attention. They enjoy unhurried walks simply to feel alive in their bodies. They sit peacefully with their thoughts, beloved pets, or treasured books, not to merely pass time until something better happens, but to be fully present within these simple moments. Consider Walter, who recently turned 80. He used to begin every morning frantically checking news headlines, responding to emails, and making back-to-back phone calls before even finishing breakfast. Now he starts each day with several minutes of comfortable silence, a glass of water sipped slowly, and simply enjoying the morning sunlight streaming through his window. With the wisdom that only comes from 8 decades of living, he admits that the calm he now experiences is something he wishes he had made time for many years earlier. Solitude naturally teaches intention. It strips away unnecessary noise and helps clarify what you truly need versus what you finally become ready to release. People who feel comfortable being alone after 70 often no longer feel driven to prove anything to anyone. They move through life unhurried, not easily pulled into activities or commitments that don't nourish their spirit. They live with greater attention, remarkable care, and a deep appreciation for the present moment that many younger people spend entire lifetimes desperately seeking. They aren't disconnected from life. They're actually more deeply connected to themselves, to what genuinely matters, and to the natural rhythm of a quieter but infinitely richer existence. And in that thoughtful stillness, they often discover more profound wisdom than any crowded conversation could ever offer. Final thoughts. If you've noticed yourself gradually drifting away from constant social activity as you age, remember, that's not a weakness or flaw. It might actually be one of your greatest developing strengths. Choosing solitude after 70 isn't about unhealthy isolation. It's about wisdom, It's about finally knowing yourself well enough to stop chasing noise and start embracing quiet truth. Like finding a peaceful harbor after decades on stormy seas, there's profound relief in no longer feeling the need to perform for others. What resonated with you most from our journey together? Was it how solitude brings unexpected peace? Or perhaps, how liberating it feels when saying no finally comes without guilt attached? Maybe you've already started setting healthier boundaries in your own life. Or perhaps you've noticed yourself increasingly drawn to moments of stillness. These aren't changes to hide or resist. They're natural evolutions to honor and embrace. This exploration wasn't about promoting loneliness. It was about recognizing the quiet power that comes from spending quality time with yourself. The kind of power that emerges from thoughtful reflection, intentional living, and creating a life authentically aligned with your deepest values. When you finally stop constantly rushing, pleasing others, and performing to meet expectations, you naturally begin becoming more of your genuine self. And that version, that grounded, thoughtful, peaceful version, is something truly worth celebrating. So, the next time someone comments that you're alone too much, simply smile gently to yourself, because maybe, just maybe, you've discovered something they haven't found yet. The kind of profound wisdom that only grows in quiet, undisturbed places. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. I'd love to hear from you. Share one insight you gained today and how you might apply it in your own life. Your thoughts and experiences matter greatly, so please don't hesitate to share them. If you found value in these reflections, please support this work by liking, subscribing, and sharing with others who might benefit. Your encouragement helps continue creating meaningful content that truly makes a difference. Until next time, may you find peace in both connection and solitude.